welcome to Tasty Tuesdays. I'm Lorraine Hughes from Crafting Possibilities, your host for tonight. And tonight we have Kate Fallon from Sekhmet Studio. Hello, Kate. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. So let me introduce you properly. So Kate Fallon is from Sekhmet Studio, based in the Adelaide Hills. Whoop, whoop, go the Adelaide Hills.
Yeah. Welcome.
She's had a vast and varied journey into spirituality and healing, initially coping with her awareness using toxic methods, which had her reaching the deepest depths of darkness, and then was guided into her healing these deep traumatic experiences using her connection to the divine Egyptian feminine and channeling her reawakened healing capacities into the creation of Orgonite Pyramids as a fusion Middle Eastern dancer, as a Orgonite Creatrix, Mosaic Artist, and also offering Sobriety Tools, and now as an End of Life Doula, also known as a Death Doula. So tonight we are going to be specifically targeting on this Death Doula, End of Life Doula, new part of Sekhmet Studio. I am so excited. I've never spoken to a Death Doula before, so yay! Welcome.
As far as I know, there's only about 6 to 12 in South Australia.
Wow.
That's what I've heard on the grapevine.
Oh, yeah. Goodness gracious me. I'm in very special company then. Elite company.
Okay. I do have a slight cold, so my voice is a little bit crackly, but
that's okay. We'll work with that one.
Goes with the territory.
So I would love to know what drew you to being a death doula, an end of life doula?
How the hell did this happen?
Yeah.
How the hell did this happen? So I just reframed some of the standard questions into how did I begin this journey as an end of life doula. Mm-hmm. The names are interchangeable, death doula or end of life doula. Some people prefer end of life doula. Sounds a little less confronting than death doula. Mm-hmm. So, and for that purpose, I tend to go with end of life doula. But mm-hmm. So it's kind of come about completely out of the blue. I had a very tumultuous 2 years this year and all of last year, and the beginning of this year I had a big health crisis, possibly the biggest health crisis I've had since I was originally diagnosed with bowel disease at about 18 or 19 years old. I had a relapse of my bowel disease back in January, and I lost a lot of blood, and I was put into the bowel wards at Flinders Hospital. I had 2 bowel surgeries, had some endoscopes, top surgeries, checking for cancer and all sorts of things like that. And at the same time as that was happening, I had also been on a wait list for a shoulder reconstruction surgery that had been left for about 2.5 years because of the COVID restrictions on elective surgeries. So that one got drawn out a bit. So at the start of 2023, I knew it was going to be a hard year, and I found myself in my bowel disease relapse and still waiting for my shoulder surgery. And I spent some time in the bowel ward at Flinders, and I do have to say that bowel wards in hospitals are some of the most terrifying places on earth. Wow. There is there is not a lot of nice stuff happening in the bowel wards. It's very confronting. And I remember it as a late teenager being in those bowel wards. And this was my first time back in the bowel wards in, probably 25 years since I've been in the bowel wards. And my stay back in January, there was an elderly lady in the bed next to me. And once my procedures had sort of been done and my medications had been sorted, and I was kind of in the process of working out how I was going to go home and manage, once I know that I'm okay-ish, I have always tend to walk around the ward and talk to people. I just do. I don't know. I did it as a teenager as well. And the woman in the bed next to me, she didn't have any visitors in the time that I was there. So I pulled up a chair and I sat next to her. And she was telling me that she knew that she had terminal cancer. They hadn't officially told her, but she knew that she had terminal cancer. And we were only chatting for about 20 minutes, and then the team of nurses and doctors came in to take her off for her surgery. And so I, said goodbye. She was really vivacious, really spirited, really positive, amazing woman. I was quite astounded at just how strong and unfazed and that she seemed. Anyway, she was wheeled off, and about half an hour later, the head nurse of the ward came back in to the room and came up to me and said, I saw you talking with, say, Denise. I can't remember what her name was, so I'll just say Denise. She said, I saw you talking with Denise. And you seemed like you guys knew each other. And I said, oh, no, I was just chatting with her because she was in the bed next to me. And she said, well, as they were putting her under for her surgery, they did in fact tell her that she did have terminal cancer and that she would have to make decisions about chemotherapy and things like that. And they told her this information just before she was knocked out for her procedure. And apparently, so this topic, trigger warning, this topic can get a little heavy and light. Apparently the doctors had actually decided that at that moment was the appropriate moment to tell her the truth. She already knew the truth in her, she already knew in her gut, but to have them say it at that moment, it triggered something in her, a response that probably an emotional response that she hadn't connected with yet. And she had gone into a panic right before she was knocked out unconscious. And so the nurse was saying to me, when she comes back, would you mind keeping an eye on her? Because she's just found out that she's terminal. And she went into a state of shock and panic. And
understandable.
Understandable. But so they had nurses and doctors coming in and going. They have teams of people, and they come in and they go, they come in and they go. And she knew, I knew, everybody knew that she was terminal, but nobody had actually told her directly. It's almost like they didn't know whose job it was. There was too many cooks in the kitchen. Whose job was it to tell her this information? So they obviously gave her this information at this critical moment. When she came back to the ward and back into her bed, I was there for probably another day, and she never spoke another word. And it was almost like she was so shocked she could no longer speak. And she had a visit from her granddaughter. And because the nurse had asked me, I'm a patient at this point. Like, I am a patient, right? The head nurse has asked me to watch her and keep an eye on her because she's just found out she's got cancer. So the first thing I did before she even came back to the ward was remove the big bunch of dead flowers that had been sitting by her bedside for God knows how long. She'd been in there for 3 weeks or something. And nobody had thought to take this big dead bunch of flowers out. So I'm like, well, there's not a lot I can do. So I went over and made sure that she had water and the things that she would need. And I took the dead flowers out. I'm like, you don't want to come back from surgery like that, knowing that you're terminal, to look at dead flowers. You know, it's just like common sense, actually. And so when she came back, yeah, she didn't say a word. The only thing she said was, the flowers are gone. And I thought that was interesting, because it was like, you don't think about it. This woman has been lying in a bed, staring at them for so long, and sort of just not thought to say, to somebody to take them. And no nurses, they're walking past them and thought, let's remove the dead flowers. Anyway, her granddaughter came in, and I said, because I was leaving, I said, can I chat with you? And we did a lap of the ward. And I explained to her that her grandmother was terminal, and she was aware deep down that she was terminal, but it hadn't really become real. And that in that moment before surgery, it became real. And your grandmother has stopped talking. She was this completely different person. Anyway, my point with that story is that for some bizarre reason, I happen to be there at the same time and have to be the one to deliver this information to the first family member that had come in, that happened to be her granddaughter. And I don't have a problem doing that or finding the vocabulary to do that. So that kind of occurred in the hospital. And after that, I came out of the hospital and plodded along. I had another procedure to check for cancer myself, which I was given the all clear. And then I got a date for my shoulder surgery. So that was back in March.
Mm-hmm.
And what was supposed to be a relatively simple arthroscopy turned into a full shoulder reconstruction. And I've had 3 babies, and I can honestly say that it is the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. And the journey of it has been, I'm about 6 months post-op now, just over 6 months, is that a very acute reality hit me. And that was that I had lost dance from my life.
Mm-hmm.
Dance was 90% of the contributing factor as to why my shoulder needed surgery in the first place, along with a little too much gardening and carrying too many infants. Primarily from 10 years of dancing and the repetitive arm movements. And that was something that I wasn't prepared for. I, in my head, was like, I'm going to I'm going to get the all clear from the bowel cancer. I'm going to have the shoulder surgery. I'm going to heal from that. I'll be back dancing. I'll be back doing all the things that I love to do, and life will go on. And it turned out that that's not the case at all. So in some ways, End of Life Doula, it was something that was coming into play with my interactions with other humans, but it was also coming into play in my own life. There was a part of my life, a huge part of my life, that had died, that had gone, and I grieved like you wouldn't believe. Grieved, and somewhere in the process of accepting that my body will no longer dance the way that it used to, or maybe never again, and then grieving the loss of that, I opened space for whatever the new thing was going to be, because dance was a passion that had really grabbed me in my early 20s. So I was just thinking, oh, something else will come along. Something, something else.
It always does.
It always does, right? And you never know what it's going to be. And it generally does, it doesn't come about until you've made space for it. So I'd done my time. I'd done the grieving. I was waiting for the next call. And I don't even know, I couldn't even tell you, to be honest, where I even first heard the term End of Life Doula. I couldn't even tell you. I've got no idea. But I always knew that, you've got a midwife or a birthing doula. I always knew, I was like, I can't do that. But you can give me the dying people. That's not a problem for me. Give me death and I'll do that. Don't give me the birth. That's not me. I'll take them out. Not in. And so, End of Life Doula crossed my path. And I knew that I had just an innate ability to do that. And it wasn't just from the experience that I had in the hospital in January, when I was in hospital in the bowel ward as a teenager. There was a terminal lady in there. She was in her 90s and she was terminal. And I would sit with her every day and she would just chat to me, about her life. Like, I was never, even at that young age, I wasn't afraid of people that were dying. It wasn't something that I was afraid of. And I think that the blessings of having such serious illnesses that put you in these places where there are people, where there are people that are actively dying, and the bowel ward is one of those places.
Oh yeah.
So it's always been in my sphere. And my own grandmother passed about a decade ago. She was 92. And I remember walking into her hospital room with my daughter, who was only 5. And I could see immediately from looking at her that the dying process had begun. And so I sat with her, and my daughter was with me, and we just held her hand and sat with her. And I took some time to be with her. And then I called my mother, who's her daughter, and I said, your mum has started the dying process. So when you come in, I had to sort of give my mum a pep talk. I don't know how old I was. I would have been 30, so 14 years ago. I said to my mum, don't do what I know you want to do. which is hit the panic button and just start getting all the people in and the panicking and like just walk in. And I waited for her to come in and look at it and just be at peace with it for a minute, because people just panic. They're like, oh my God,
yeah, they do.
She's dying. It's like, quick, resuscitate her. It's like, she's 92. She's dying.
It's time to let go. She's choosing for her.
Yeah. This isn't one of those moments where you rush in with all of the people and the defibrillators and kind of bring this person back. This is the moment of like not doing that, the complete opposite. So I had to give my mum this pep talk of not doing that. And she did really well. She came in and she didn't do the panic buttons and the whole thing. Took about 12 hours, and she had family, and she'd become a Baha'i, which is a branch of Buddhism. So she had a lot of monks around her. And anyway, the whole thing was very beautiful. So yeah, I found myself at a fork in the road of finding a new path, letting go of one path and going down another one. And so it's been the end of dance and the beginning of End of Life Doula.
I love that for you. Yeah.
So I jumped online and did some research, because there isn't any actual certifying body to become an End of Life Doula. There's nothing around that. It's not like being a midwife where you need the paperwork. There isn't that for End of Life Doula.
Right.
So I jumped online, and there's a couple of courses out there. So I found an online course through a business called the Peaceful Presence Project, which is just run by a few women. And they give you course material that just helps you create your own personalized toolbox and learn more about, everything to do with being an End of Life Doula. And you get access to the material for a year. And I'm spending the year rehabilitating my shoulder to even just have basic functioning. So I can't do a lot with it. So whilst I'm healing from my own bowel disease relapse and my shoulder surgery, I'm just chipping away at this content of the course, which is really beautiful. So I would definitely say that it was a calling.
Absolutely. It's quite fascinating how quite often on these, when I have beautiful guests like yourself on, other pieces of information start floating my way around the topic that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
And today I've been listening to Dolores Cannon, the search for hidden sacred knowledge. And they were talking in there about one of the people who, it's just the compilation of many, different people's experiences. And one of the people that she was talking to in one of the lifetimes, they had a specific capacity with the crystals. And long story short, while they put people into like chambers to do healings with them with the crystals, they also had a chamber for death. So this person who was, at the end of her life, she was going into the death chamber essentially, because she'd lived for hundreds of years, and it was she's just like, you know what, it's time to go. I'm kind of just ready now. And so they put all the appropriate types of crystals around her, so around her body, so she could leave with ease. So it didn't have to be painful. It didn't have to be slow and drawn out. It could be a very gentle, loving kind of process. And I was just like, oh, wow. Not sure. She didn't say. But it's one from thousands of years ago.
From way back. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, wow, that's so interesting. And it's like this knowledge is still available to us now. And I'm just curious, like perhaps that's something that is that something that is talked about in the Death Doula side of things, is bringing in things like crystals and other tools to assist.
Let me just have a look at my notes. The way it's presented to me now as an end of life doula has a very, just in this particular course, is a very modern day approach to, with things to do with, so as a death doula, I am offering multi-level support to the dying person, their family or caregivers. I can offer the creating of a vigil space and holding space, and also have sort of compiled access to information to do with your funeral options, your body preparation options, and all the different rituals. Like I think what that you're just saying is a ritual around the dying process. So in our Western culture, we've kind of removed, like we still have ritual around it, but it's become like anything else, like Christmas or something, it's become consumerized and sort of capitalized on it. Money got involved.
Yeah.
Basically.
And watered down a lot too. Like there's been a massive separation. And from what I see is there's a huge separation between the death process and the family and the people involved, humanity.
It's a big mess. Yeah. So it's about when the person who is dying and their family and their caregivers are there, it is very, very hard to see clearly through grief. And if you're the dying person, through, you're on all these medications, and it's very, very hard to make clear decisions. To have somebody slightly removed that can come in and have it's not the approach of coming in to fix anything. It's just an approach of meeting humanity with my humanity. And I know suffering and I know pain, and I'm connected with my own humanity, as hard as it is. And so it's about being able to connect with another person's humanity in those moments. So it can be a lot to do with helping people find agency and knowing what their rights are and having a certain element of control. We do live in a culture where birthing, you have this array of options. You can water birth, you can epidural, you can not epidural, you can home birth, you can do skin on skin, it's just, you can have, the list goes on and on. But when it comes to death options, we just don't have them. We don't only do we not have death options, but we don't know what our rights are. So,
so what are some of the things that people might be surprised about as far as their rights?
So I've become dear friends with a woman who lost her daughter 3 years ago. Her daughter was about 46 years old, and she lost her daughter to, she died of alcoholism, and she died in hospital of alcoholism. So there was a knowing that she was going to die. And she was given the option, the mum, who is on her own at that point, grief-stricken, with her firstborn child, her daughter has died, to decide whether or not she wants any of the healthy organs to be donated. So she's having to ponder that decision and make a decision. And they sort of press you, because it is a pressing decision. You need to know. So she decided, no, I don't want to do that. She didn't want to do that. And next minute, her daughter's body has been taken away, and they had cut all of her hair off and sort of changed the way she looked. And so when she finally got to her daughter's body, she was just horrified. What have you done to her? These sorts of things. And so what you're getting is, not only are you in the most unbearable amount of grief, but you don't have control over what's happening to your loved one. So, like, things to be aware of: if somebody dies in your home, even if it's an imminent death, so that, like, if somebody drops dead of a heart attack in your home, you do have to call the police. The police is the first phone call you have to make. If somebody dies in your home that is an imminent death, that everybody knows that this death is coming. The first people you have to call is also the police. So, and you're only given a certain window of time where you're allowed to do that. So, which I think is actually kind of wrong, but it's a toss. I guess they don't want people leaving dead bodies in their houses for weeks. I mean, I get it. That's not ideal, because people are grief-stricken and traumatized, so they may not be thinking clearly. So I think you've got a certain number of hours before you have to report a death. But it also seems extremely traumatizing that the police would then arrive, with the guns and the holsters. It's very strange. So, and it's not done like that in other cultures. It's really not. There's cultures, we're very odd in the West. There's cultures that know that once a body has died, once the person has died, the loved one stays, like the Greeks and stuff, the loved one stays in the home where the family members can anoint the body, clean the body, wash the body, perform the rituals that they need to do to prepare the body for burial. But yeah, we don't have any of those kind of traditional rituals here in Australia. So we just have this very bizarre system where you call the police. So there's a woman I know who works at my local op shop. Her name's Kate also, and her husband died of a heart attack last year, and they knew he was having a heart attack, and as they were trying to get out the front door to the car, he died in the doorway. But because he was still technically in the house, all the police had to come, and there has to be an investigation launched. So even an imminent death in your home of your beloved who is dying of cancer, in their own bed, the police need to be called and an investigation is launched. So yeah, I think some of that's definitely, it's not ideal.
I think it's just, I find it really fascinating that we are just like, because obviously I come from New Zealand.
Yeah.
So in New Zealand, there's a really interesting mix of cultures over there. It's a big, huge melting pot. And part of the Māori culture over there is that they then are able to take the body home to either home or the marae or the pā or whatever.
Yeah.
And the people are able to sit with the body for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so it's obviously it's embalmed, so that makes that process a little bit more stable.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing, and it gives everybody a really lovely chance to grieve. And generally what they call is a tangi is what that thing is, that process is called, and it can be anywhere between 3 and 5 days for the family. And you know, it's a big thing, and people come and they cry and they celebrate and they laugh and they, you know, they celebrate the life, not the fact that they're dead, but you know, they get together and they grieve together.
Yeah.
And you know, and not everybody can come on day one, and so that's part of why it is so long. And the community is just really aware that that's what's happening. And you know, they sleep in the big sleeping house together with the body.
They will sleep with they will sleep with the body. So these are big cultural differences where I think you can ask for permission to do that in our culture. Like, it's not against the thing, but it's been given the name home funeral. So in the Maori culture, and there's lots of cultures that do that 3 to 5 days. It's pretty standard spiritual practice, is the 3 to 5 days where the people come and they sleep with the body and it all happens. And it's a very community spiritual process. We call it, in our kind of not very spiritualized Western way, it is called the home funeral movement. So, so it's like, it's not like, it's like we're trying to say we're progressive or something with this home funeral movement. It's like, these guys have been doing this shit for thousands of years. And we're like, this is a new age movement, home funeral movement. So I think it's very early days, and this is really new. So you can kind of like apply or get permission. I'm still studying, so I'm not entirely sure who the fuck you ask, but you can get permission to have the body at home, and you do a home funeral, which is essentially that. You have the body at home, you do all of that in the home. So one of the most, actually, I think, oh yeah, there it is. One of the most profound things that I heard, which kind of sums up, I've done about 65-70% of my course. So maybe we can touch again later, like at the end of the year or something. But the main message from this first part of the course, because a lot of it to me is just common sense, for God's sakes, is that the truth is death is a community event with a medical component, whereas in our culture we see it as a medical event with a community component. So does that make sense? And I have to say it to myself a few times. Death is a community event with a medical component, not a medical event with a community component. And so that is the tastiest, juiciest part of information that we need to get our head around. Like, for example, how my mom would have come in when my nana was dying and gone, this is this big medical crisis. It's like, no, this is a community event with a medical component, you know, where you may choose to bring in a little bit of the medical with the morphine or something, but this is a community event. that kind of segues me into, I have lost it. Oh, here it is. Yeah. In Tibetan culture, Buddhist culture, they take things a little bit further, and they aim for a conscious death. So that is the goal. The goal is to have a conscious death. And there's a movie that I've watched with my neighbor, and it's called Karma. And Karma is a young boy. His name is Karma. Lives in a village in the Himalayas in Tibet. And there's an old woman, an elderly woman who's dying. And so the whole community gathers in this particular room, hall, space. And she has a doula person who is a male by her side, and he's giving her liquid to drink. Not quite sure what the liquid is. It could be anything. It could be their type of herbal pain relief or whatever it is. It's not clear in the movie, but and he is talking to her through the entire time, telling her to stay present and stay conscious through the process. And the whole tribe is in this space, including the children. Everybody's there. This is a big community event. And if any of the children or the young ones are crying or can't cope, then they're removed, because they're trying to create an environment where there is no fear and there is no grief, that this is a natural process. And the idea is to aim for a conscious death. It's a very, very powerful scene in the movie. The movie's called Karma, that shows how the Buddhists go about their death rituals up until when she dies. And then after she dies, she's cremated up there, because they can't dig holes in the Himalayas. It's all
yeah.
So that movie is quite profound.
Just as we're moving through, so Miss Kate, you, as I mentioned before, you also create Orgonite Pyramids.
I do.
And you told me you've been very, very generous, and you have a beautiful Orgonite pyramid to give away to one lucky viewer today.
I do. So I'm going to show it to you.
Ooh, we get a little sneak preview.
Yeah, well, my idea was that for your listeners, I never miss a minute in life to tell the people that I love them. So my dearest friend, my oldest and most dearest friend, we tell each other that we love each other after every text message or every communication, after every visit. And we have normalized the expression of love that we have for one another. And I also do it with my family and my daughter every day. It is an everyday thing to always tell the people that you love that you love them. And I think when you're around dying people a lot, it really becomes something we have to consciously do. So really make sure we tell the people that we love them. So
absolutely,
that was my little piece of homework for your listeners.
Ooh.
To take a minute and just tonight or tomorrow morning to really tell someone that you love, that you really love them. And I think that's the part of being connected with death in that way, is that it's not bleak at all. It actually can be used to enliven you and remember that life is short and precious, and you don't want to miss a minute to tell the people that you love that you love them.
Absolutely.
So whether these people are going to write it to you or just remember to tell someone who they know that they love them. I'm just going to get, this one's a little pink one.
It's so beautiful, my friends. And I've seen some photos and I am seriously jealous.
Yeah.
So in the chat right now, if you are watching right now,
yes.
I would like you to, number one, say hello. Say hi. And then also
remind someone you love them.
Yeah. Tell somebody that you love them. And, who's that person going to be? I've actually I know of a friend of mine who's struggling a lot at the moment, and they've had a lot of shifts and changes in their life in the recent months, and they're going through their own grief process, their own little bit of death process. And I know that they could really do with somebody just saying to them from one friend to another, do you know what? I really do love you.
Yeah.
And that you matter to me. You are important to me.
My best friend and I say, we tell each other we love each other pretty much every day. And we let each other know that we can't do this life thing without each other. Because we do tend to tell the people around us closely, partners, children, that we love them, but it can very quickly just turn into just, I love you, bye, which I suppose is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
So I made that collection through this collection of pyramids that I made. I don't know, there was about 11 or 12 in the collection. It's called Middle Earth. Was the collection I worked on this year while I was going through all of my own health battles and whatnot. And it was just a reminder that we're kind of in the middle, the Middle Earth,
Yeah,
not above.
Absolutely.
We're not above and we're not below. We're actually all here, and connecting your humanity with another person's humanity is what we actually need.
For sure. Ah, gosh. And now back to being with the whole death process and all of that sort of thing. So you're ultimately, what would you like to see in the community as far as, the death process goes in general terms? What would you like? What's your ultimate goal? What's your aim?
Right. The ultimate goal is I can end with this because I think you'll like this one. Let me just get this one here. All right. So because in the Western society, we do absolutely everything we can to avoid dealing with the fact that we are actually going to die. Every night that we go to sleep I have heard it is called the little death. Every night when we lay down and we prepare ourselves, we do our little rituals and what we do, and then we lie down and we surrender into our unconsciousness. Every single night when we do that, we are actually practicing. And hang on, let me just move this. Thanks. Yes, we are actually practicing, and we have a lot of fear around death. So my goal is to remove the fear, because I cannot think of anything worse than facing death or dying in panic and terror. So from your like a woo-woo spiritual perspective, there's we're made up of the elements, right? So in the dying process, it's what you will see, and it is like what not to fear. And it goes something like this. I'll try and say it right, okay? The human body is of the earth. So the first stage is that the earth in the body yields to the water. And then the water in the body, the saliva, the urine, the tears, the sweat, it starts to dry up. We start to lose the water. The water element yields to fire. The fire element presents as a fever in the next stage of dying. So it's like in stages. And the fire element presents a fever, which will help to dry up all of the fluids. Then the water ceases, because we are a lot of water. The fire yields to the next element, which is air. And then we become just breath. And the breath of a dying person is not the same as you and I regularly breathing now. There is something called the death rattle, which can happen, which can sound very frightening when people don't know what's happening. But the breath changes. There can be huge pauses between an inhale and an exhale, to the point where they breathe in and you don't even know if they're going to breathe out again. Like, it can take that long, 20 seconds between breaths. So the fire yields to air, to the breath. And the final stage is the final exhale. And that is when the air yields to space, to ether. So that is when all the elements, earth, water, fire, and air, and then the next stage into ether, into space, into the unknown, really. And that is when that final exhale of air ends the process. So I think that works for me. I mean, some people would be more scientific perhaps, but that elemental journey and knowing the process helps to understand what is happening and lessen the fear or lessen the need to intervene when you know what stages the body is going through, what it's experiencing as it moves towards the final exhale. And it can be very similar to birth in that you're traditionally speaking, your first birth is a minimum of about 12 hours. And a death process can take months, it can take weeks, it can take days, but it still follows the same spiritual protocol of earth into water, water drying up into fire, fire yielding into the air, and then the air finally yielding into space. And from there is what you said before. From there is the moment where Western culture likes to whisk that body away, and the more spiritual cultures, the ancient cultures, the older cultures, they know. They leave the body. They give it time. It's usually is 3 to 5 days. They give it time to be washed and to be touched and connected with. And yeah, and it's an absolutely beautiful process. But I found that information about the stages of dying, it really resonated with me.
Absolutely.
And also that concept that remembering, because it's sort of drilled into us the opposite, that death is actually a community event with a bit of a medical component. It's not a medical event with a community and component. And when that shift happens in the brain, you're like, we don't need to necessarily rush to hospitals or get doctors in or do all these big scenes to prevent these stages. happening. So yeah, knowledge of what you're seeing. Education helps to dispel the fear that we feel.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I really love about the concept of the death doula is, being able to get an end of life plan in place. And, especially for people who are terminal and they're aware that stuff is coming up. But, even for just any time, to be honest, having somebody who can take you through the parts and pieces of the end of life process and the what you would like to see happen. It's different from a will, and that's what people have to comprehend, is that those two things are very, very different. Could you please explain just a little bit more, just to get that out there?
Well, I think your will tends to address more your materialistic possessions and in which ways you would like those things to go. But in sit downs with an end of life doula, you can discuss more things along the lines of what we've been talking about, that you would like your body to stay in the home for a few days, if you're in a position to be able to make those sorts of conscious cognitive choices. And also there's the home funeral thing, the home funeral movement. It is actually growing in momentum. So it is becoming more normalized to have your funeral at home rather than at a parlor, which is all quite strange. And also the green burial movement is very big.
I love that.
Love the green burial. It's like, put me in a wicker basket, cover me with flowers, put me in the ground. Beautiful. Because to me, the idea of this elaborately constructed, over-lacquered, shiny as fuck box that is just an incredible piece of carpentry that just gets put into the ground, and it actually leaches chemicals from all the bloody lacquer that they put on it. It's the shiniest wood shit you'll ever see in your life. Leaches all these chemicals into the earth. So the green burial stuff is quite big now. So these are the things that you can really nut out with your doula and your family and have a concise plan. In terms, like, you wouldn't necessarily, if you've got stuff, I don't know, I haven't got shit, but if you're somebody that's got a lot of stuff, maybe you need an accountant, you know what I mean, to help you work out that. I can't probably help you with that. I can sign stuff. I'm a JP, but I'm not an accountant. But yeah, getting the information and collaborating and building a death plan of how you would like the process to go for you, levels of intervention, and what sort of burial you'll like. Not, if you want to go to the funeral parlor and do it that way, where they, you can choose to do that. It's totally fine. But for me personally, I can't think of anything worse than going into this poisonous, leachy casket put in the ground. It just seems like an extravagant waste of resources, actually. I mean,
yeah.
Quite happy even to just be shrouded in cotton and
me too. The death plan, I actually first heard about a death plan from a YouTuber who did nail art. And what she was doing was she was basically doing a death plan for all of her bits and pieces with all of her nail polish collection and the cats and the like who's going to get what of the cats and the nail polish stuff and her peely bag.
That's amazing.
And she did it on a big piece of paper, and
my phone is about to go flat.
Absolutely, that's cool, honey.
It's getting too old. I'm so sorry, but we've hit the hour.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you, Kate, for coming on to chat with us. And again, if you've watched the show and you're like, oh, that Orgonite Pyramid's calling to me,
Let me
let me know who
Let
you
Loren
have
know
sent a message of love
who
to.
it is you love. Even if it's Loren, even better. If it's you, even better. You need someone to tell you, I really love you, and I really can't do this life without you.
Yeah.
And you never want to miss a moment to say those things. That's why being an end-of-life doula, it is actually, I don't find anything scary or off-putting about death at all. I find it to be such a beautiful, it's the last stage of life. It's the last 5 minutes of a movie, where it's just like this big crescendo moment. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. So I'm still early days learning, there's a lot of empowering that needs to be done as individuals. I didn't know all of this stuff, the green burials, and I'm like, if you don't tell someone,
much.
if you don't tell someone, next minute you're going to be dressed up looking like a crazy person in an open casket in this heavily lacquered box, and you're like, what the hell? This is just getting a little bit educated.
And you may or may not still have all of your organs intact.
I mean, honestly, I guess a lot of it, I suppose, doesn't really matter. But if you can have a say, then it's nice to be able to have a little bit of agency.
Absolutely.
So at the very least, I've learned that I 100% want a green burial. Just put me in a wicker basket. There's also the composting thing that gets done as well.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some really cool stuff around that too.
And I'd like to be at home. I want to be home in my bed. I want everyone lying on the floor, in my room. I don't want to go into the funeral home. This just sounds all very strange. So just having a bit of education. So if anyone who's listening does need any assistance to navigate such a big, complicated, messy time, that's what end of life doulas can come in. And we don't come in to fix anything. We don't come in with more knowledge than anybody else. We just come in to walk alongside and to truly listen with a humble ear and meet humanity where it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just in the chat there, it looks like the Orgonite is going to find itself a little home.
I'm sure it will. It went to the perfect place last time.
I know. So, I'll have a chat with you afterwards, Kate and Edwina. Please PM me your address.
Thanks so much.
So Edwina said, hello. I just said to my children, I love them. I tell them every night before bed that I love them.
Yeah.
So now, as someone who grew up with a mum who didn't do that, that just makes my heart just go kaboof,
I didn't get that either. Yeah.
So I'm just got tingles all over.
Always a pleasure.
Alrighty, everybody. So of course I'll be back on Friday for Find You Fridays, the intuitive reading show. I'm really looking forward to this Friday. I think, have we got a full moon this Friday? I think we might. So it's going to be a whopper of a night, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you, Kate, for coming and playing with us tonight. If you would like to contact Kate for her services, or maybe the Orgonite Pyramids or anything else that she does, please check out the show notes. Everything's in there. And wow, what an absolutely amazing conversation. Thank you, Kate, for coming on the show tonight. And I really seriously look forward to seeing or checking in with you in a little while, perhaps, and seeing how you go after you've had a few clients come through and a few more clients, and see what interesting knowledge and experiences you're gaining.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
Yeah. All right, everybody.
Thank you so
I hope. Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you. Till next time.
Bye.
Do something tasty for yourself. Be bold. Be brave. Be you. I adore you all. Thank you. Mwah.
Mwah.